Hi, my name's Nick Best and I'm Managing Director here at Astranti, and what I'm going to be doing over this series of videos is guiding you, supporting you in terms of analysing the DreemPark case study. This is for the May 2016 Strategic Case Study exam, and I'm going to be using all of my experience to guide you in terms of what to pull out of this pre-scene, what the most likely issues in the exam are going to be. We're going to do strategic analysis. I'm going to go through my top 10 issues with you, the issues I think are most likely to come out of this case study. Analysing the industry is going to be part of this as well. So this video series, a full and complete analysis of the case study. So before we go into that, let me go into a little bit more detail about what we're going to cover and how we're going to cover that. So as I say, I'm Nick Best. There's me. Okay, it's funny sometimes when you see your own photo suddenly popped up on the screen. I've got 9 years of case study experience. I have seen, what must it be, 30, 40 different case studies now for the final level case study, and actually ones at OCS and MCS as well. I've coached individuals one-to-one. I've taught case study at BPP, at Kaplan, at First Intuition, at Reed Business School before when I started Astranti Up. And so I've got all of that experience, and basically my goal in these videos is to use that experience to guide you in terms of what are the key things to pull out, what are the most likely issues in the exam, what is it that you need to do to pass this exam. And so one thing I will say about the case studies is there are so many clues in the case study as to what it is that's going to be in the exam and what isn't going to be in the exam, and that's what I hope to use my experience to guide you in the right direction for. Okay, so with this video series then, the first few videos are going to focus on really the business, the strategy. We are going to go through the case study section by section by section. We're going to look at various different business models and how they will relate to the case study. I will pick up on certain exam issues. Actually, the last of the bullet points there, the exam hints and tips. Obviously, I've got my course videos and masterclasses where I really focus on how to go about passing the exam in terms of the way you approach the exam on exam day, write out your points, structure your report, how to pass, how to deal with the unseen issues. But as and when issues and things occur to me during this Preseen Analysis video, I will bring up hints and tips of those as we go through as well. Okay, so I'll try and bring in as much of that as possible. So having done E3, we go on to F3. Now E3 is normally 4 or 5 different videos, probably going up to about 2 to 3 hours as we go through the case, looking from a strategic point of view. But of course, we've got 3 subjects to cover here, and we need to do some financial analysis from F3. We also need to think about things like dividends and dividend policy, raising funding and finance. So what I will do is I'll look at the case study and say, this is how I think you should be raising finance. This is the way that, do we need to raise finance to the extent of raising that finance? And I will guide you in the direction of what you need to do. We'll also have a big look at the idea of risk and risks in this business, which is the big P3 element that comes into the case study, as well as other P3 elements, a little bit of IT, foreign exchange, things like that, that we can make sure that we've got covered. So a whole series of videos then, they're going to guide you on all of the different elements of passing this exam. Okay. I will finish up the series with a full strategic analysis. So once we've gone through the case, I will go through model by model by model, doing Porter's 5 forces for you and pastel analysis, product life cycle if we think that's relevant, which it might be in terms of rides at theme parks, which is our case study this time round. And we'll do Ansof's matrix. We'll look at the methods of growth, Porter's generic strategies, whether that fits in, and so on. So we'll look at all of the models we think are really relevant to this business, and I'll go through them one by one, doing those models for you, and also telling you a little bit about how you can use those in the exam. This is, please, and this is my first general exam tip. This exam is not a theory exam. The biggest mistake that people say. What we do is at the end of every case study, we survey all of our students, everyone that's on our database, which is thousands of people, and we get the views of people on the exam. And we always ask the question, what would you have done more of and what would you have done less of? And the thing that everyone always says that it would have done less of in retrospect is revising the theory. Because actually the questions are not theory-based. The questions are very practically based. You can use those theories on the screen there, but you must use them in a practical way. You will not be asked the question, what is Porter's 5 forces analysis? Tell me about Ansough's matrix. What is Pestel? But you may get a question that says, examine the supplier issues on this company. And you could bring in Porter's 5 forces, the supplier power of that element, to help you. You could have a question, analyse this industry, in which case Pestel comes up. Pestel's really useful for analysing risks, particularly for companies that are expanding overseas, going into new countries. We're looking at the risks and issues. So what I would do is I will guide you as to how to use those models, given the types of questions that come up in the case study. Okay. What I will also do is give you my strategic plan. If I was running this business, this is how I would take the business forward. That's the way I end my strategic analysis. Okay, so it's very important that you know how you would take the business forward, given its strengths and weaknesses, given all your analysis, and we'll go through doing that. Okay, I will also do for you my top 10 issues, and we'll go through them in order from 10 down to 1. Now, as I already said, it is reasonably, there are lots and lots of clues in the case study as to what is going to come up in the exam, and it's reasonably predictable. Having said that, on the day of the exam, there will always be issues that are not in my top 10 as well. But certainly what I like to do, my goal is always on any particular variant, 1 or 2 of the things that come up on that variant will be related to my top 10. So therefore, if you can have prepared the points from that top 10 in advance, you can be in an excellent position to be ready to deal with what comes up in your exam, because you're already halfway there. Then there'll be some brand new things that no one could have predicted that will be there as well. Okay, I'll talk about why each of those I think is likely to arise, so you understand my logic. Okay, and for each of those I'll talk about what are the key points to pass. We might have an issue, say foreign exchange, which we know is something that's relevant to DreemPark, and if that was in my top 10, and I have to say, as of time of recording this, I haven't decided what's in my top 10, so I can't tell you that that is. But if it was, I would then talk to you about what do I think the key things are you need to learn and how you need to approach that if that was going to come up in the exam. Okay. And the key models for each issue. So for each of those 10, we will kind of go back to those models there. And I say, well, actually, if you get an issue like this come up, then you might find Ansough's matrix useful. Or an issue like that, let's say it was the supplier issue. Well, this is when you could bring in that element of Porter's 5 forces. Just talk about supplier power. Okay, so I will therefore tell you, well, these are the models that I think you could use, guiding you in the direction of the best way to approach each of these issues. The next of our videos is our industry analysis video, and this is accompanies our industry pack. Now, the industry itself, understanding the theme park industry, understanding real-life competitors, how they operate, what they do, is really useful in the exam. The reason is that you get extra marks for talking about real-life companies and real-life industry situations, as long as they're relevant to the exam, not just any old industry example that you've just pre-learnt in advance, but something that's relevant to the exam in some way. You've got those industry examples, you will get extra marks. Now, CIMA have said you don't need them, you can easily pass without them, but the examiner has also said that you will get specific marks for including those examples. And so I think, well, actually, what people really should be doing if they want to maximize their chances of passing is learning those industry examples and including those examples in their case study, because they do get marks. Even though they're not necessary, they do get good marks. So my advice is for you to go learning those. So we have our industry pack then, and that industry pack will analyze the real life competitors, the industry history. It will analyze the industry generally, a very detailed analysis of one real life competitor, and some specific industry examples that you can include in your exam. What we've done is we've taken our top 10 issues, so the most likely issues that are going to come up, and we've created for you some specific industry examples that you can learn. So let's say issue 2 comes up. Oh, I've got these 2 industry examples that I could bring into my script for that one. So hopefully get you a few more marks in the exam using that industry analysis. Okay. Now, the first set of this analysis then are my Preseen analysis videos, where we go through the Preseen, and I'm going to go through section by section. It'll be 1-2 pages at a time. I will assume no prior knowledge as we progress. Okay, so let's say we come up with an issue. I will just say, okay, well, here's an issue. There's not enough information yet. Okay, let's say it's, there's incomplete information so far, but we'll look out for that later on. Okay, so I will assume that you haven't read it through, you haven't done detailed analysis, and that, almost like we're reading it through together for the first time. And that's the way I'm going to do this. Okay, I'm going to get you to read the section first, make your own notes, and then come back and listen to me. That's the way I advise you do it. I know some people don't, they just kind of listen to my view, but I'd really love to get you thinking first, so that you actually do your own, have your own thoughts, do your own analysis, get your own ideas, and then build. You use mine to build upon your own. You'll get a lot more benefit out of it if you do that. So at the start of each video, I'll tell you this is what we're going to cover, and then I'll say, right, okay, now you go away, do your own review, come back and watch mine. Okay. Okay, then we'll be doing an F3 analysis, financial analysis, then we'll have a look at risks and any other P3 topics that we think come up in this case study. Now, a general warning for you before we start the Preseen. The Preseen is the context, it's the background. You mustn't pre-write anything based on the Preseen. The examiner, going back for case studies, we've had case studies now for 16 years at CIMA. I've been teaching them for 9, actually, really almost coming on for 10 now. And this comes up again and again and again in the examiner's comments, is too many people pre-learn what they're going to say based on the Preseen. But actually, it is the background. So, for instance, you could prepare for an issue on foreign exchange, say we thought that was a big issue, and think about what you're going to include. But you don't know the exact question that's going to come up, and you must answer that specific question, not something that you've actually pre-learned. So you're ready to answer it based on your analysis of the Preseen, and you will incorporate points from the Preseen into it, but the focus will always be answer the question asked. You also, of course, you're given with new information, okay, in the unseen on the day of the exam. And so given you've got that new information, then what's important is you also incorporate that into there, and so that you know. So therefore, do not, whatever you do, just look at the Preseen and think the Preseen, basically analyze the Preseen, pre-learn my answers, go in and write those out. Not going to work. Answer the question on the day of the exam. So a big warning for you before we go in there. One other useful tip for you, the last of those points there, your recommendations must be consistent with the strategic analysis. What I actually find, ironically, is that while you get some people who just kind of pre-learn stuff and copy it out from what they've learnt in advance, the majority of people, by the time they get to exam day, they almost don't refer to the Preseen at all, and that is also a big mistake. And actually, if you look at the examiner's guides that come out after the exams, just go back over the last year or two, you'll see almost every single one the examiner is saying, and people aren't referring to the Preseen. I remember one comment when I was reading recently, it was almost as if people hadn't even looked at the Preseen, was what she said, which is remarkable, really. But people are not using their strategic analysis to make logical recommendations and to bring points up based on that Preseen. And you really must do that, because the examiner has said that she really wants that. Okay, let's get on then and start our analysis of the Preseen. Okay, so DreemPark are a theme park based in the UK. Or actually originally in the UK. They've expanded overseas, which is something that we must take into account. Okay, so as I said, what I'm going to get you to do is I'm going to get you to read through a section first, come up with your own points, then come back and watch my own. So what I'd like you to do in this first section then is just have a read through that first little section there, have a look at the company background, and then have a look at this section, extracts from the integrated report. Okay, so it's only very, very short, but you'll be surprised actually just how much you can pull out from what is only, well, not a lot more than a page of text. There's a huge amount of information here in terms of issues, models, applications. So do as best you can as you go through to be thinking about the market, what this could mean for the exam, what key issues are arising here, and so on. Then come back to me, okay, and I will work through my views with you. Okay, so go off and do that now. Okay, so we've got, well, a whole page with just 3 lines on it. Okay, it's not even 3 lines, is it? Okay, so it's basically telling you who you are. Okay, so you are Senior Financial Manager for DreemPark. You supervise the management of accounting work within the finance department. Okay, so you're working in a finance department and you are reporting to the finance director. So what can we take out of this? Well, in the exam, the way the exam works is that you are given like real life assignments for yourself to work through. And the most likely person here you're going to get an assignment for, therefore, is the finance director. They are your boss. We're being told that here. Now, just to kind of give you some contexts, the last case study you were also working in the finance department for the finance director. Prior to that, you've been working for the board. Now, then you'd have expected more to be being given tasks by the CEO or actually any board member. So it's far more likely to be the finance director this time, but not necessarily. Okay, it could be that the CEO has got a kind of finance-related question and they want you to do some report because you just carry out assignments. And so therefore it could be that you are writing reports for other directors as well, but you're reasonably senior. Now, something else that I want to point out to you at this stage is that CIMA have also given us some general guidance on how they want you in your role how they want you to deal with that role, whatever the exam are, whatever that requirement is that's specific to us there, they've got some general guides. Now, one thing I find is that people seem to ignore this role. Perhaps many people aren't aware of it, okay? But they have given us this guide. Let's talk this through. So with CIMA's guidance, the first thing they say is that it is a strategic role. You will be expected as part of this exam to play the role of someone supporting the board, supporting strategic decisions. And as part of that, you must come up with strategic options. And what that means is let's say you have a problem. Let's say you've brought out a new ride and really it's not gone down very well. Customers don't like it, something like that. Then you need to come up with the options that can solve that particular problem. Perhaps we just scrap that ride. Perhaps we change it around in some way. Perhaps it's actually, if we think more strategically, how did we end up bringing out a new ride which actually wasn't what customers wanted? Is there an issue there with the approach to the way we develop our rides? Are we doing it maybe what we think they want rather than based on statistics and customer research and marketing? And so maybe that's where the issue lies. Maybe we need to talk to customers more, or maybe we need to change our approach to develop. So it's those options that you need to consider. And you will say, well, it could be this, we could do this, we could do this. Then we go on to look at what you will be recommending. So again, CIMA actually say that they expect you as part of a strategic role to make recommendations. Okay, so that you are giving your view. Now, this is not necessarily going to go ahead. It's going to go and be discussed by the finance director or the CEO or whoever it is that's relevant. But you are saying, I think that given this analysis, we should do this or we should do that. And the best answers, even when you're not asked to do a recommendation, they will make a conclusion or a summary, or they will give recommendation points at the end to really focus on, this is what I think, this is where I go, because you're taking a strategic role here. You're someone senior that is got to be seen to be giving of your views, giving of your analysis. I certainly know from my staff when they do work for me, I always appreciate it if they come back and they say to me, actually, given that analysis, I would recommend that we do this. Because I've got their view on it and they're not standing on the fence, and the examiner doesn't like that either. I have to say sometimes when I'm at work, okay, all too often I get people giving me, like, this is this is the analysis, and they expect me to make the decision. Actually, no. As someone, I'd love to have their view. I'd love them to give their point, and that's exactly what the examiners want you to do here. Is to give your view of okay, based on all that analysis, this is what I think we should do, and this is why. Okay, and CIMA are saying yes, we want you to do that. CIMA are also saying that they want you to cover finance. That should not be a surprise to you, but this is basically F3. In fact, what I should probably do is say, not surprisingly, the role that they want you to take is reflective of the different subjects that you've studied. So therefore, at the strategic elements is all your E3, and of course then they want you to cover finance and F3. They want you to think about raising finance, things like dividends and debt and equity, a little bit of financial reporting. But to be fair, this exam isn't really a financial reporting exam. You don't tend to get big financial reporting questions, or really hardly any financial reporting questions in this exam particularly. So don't worry too much about that, fortunately for many people. I think many of us management accountants, that's not our strongest point. It's not mine. Okay, I know a little bit about it, but it's not my strongest point. I'm more of an E3, P3 person myself, and a case study person, of course, as well, which is where I spend the rest of my time. So therefore, risk is the next thing that comes up in that role. Analyze the risks and deal with those risks. And actually, it starts to become a kind of nice structure for whenever you're answering your questions, because you get a question, let's say it's that ride, and my recommendation is to scrap it and bring in a new ride. Then the question then is, well, where's the money going to come from? What's the finance? What are the risks in doing that? Okay, kind of reputational risks, or risks in terms of new rides and health and safety and so on. And so you can start to use that as a way to help you generate ideas as well. Okay, so CIMA have given us that role. We want to build that into your role in the finance department doing accounting work. I think the other thing worth saying is that if you're writing to the finance director, that you can assume knowledge of financial technical theory. You can talk about NPVs and debt and finance and financial instruments and ways of managing risk. With some knowledge, the FD will know really what you're talking about. A quick reminder, yes, okay, because even financial directors, they might not remember some of the theory, okay, but beyond that, you can assume knowledge. If you were reporting to someone maybe at the board, maybe it was the board as a whole, that on the board as a whole will be people that don't know everything to do with finance, and therefore you might not just be able to assume that they know what an NPV is. Okay, but by and large, most likely you'll be reporting to the finance director. They'll know the financial terms, and therefore you don't have to go re-explaining those. However, do in the exam tailor your answer to who you're writing to, given what their needs and interests are. Finance director, they're interested in finance, strategy, and the link between finance and strategy, and that's where your focus should be in the exam. Okay, let's move on then, and let's have a look at the company background. Okay, so first thing to notice here then is they are a quoted company. And what we then find out actually is that they were founded in the UK. And actually, one thing I will say from something later on, I said I wouldn't give too much stuff from later on, but it's kind of useful to know this, is that when we see the accounts at the end, they're all in pounds. So therefore, I think we can probably assume, although it doesn't say specifically, we can probably assume that that is therefore that they are quoted in the UK. They don't have to be, but it's highly likely given the accounts are in pounds. So first thing therefore to say is that from a governance point of view, so here is our first bit of P3 coming out. I talked about risk in P3, but of course we've got governance and ethics from P3 as well. Actually, ethics, a quick aside, ethics is really, really important in this exam. It's probably the most important topic, and you're going to find that throughout this series I'm going to talk a lot about ethics, because ethics comes up again and again. It's your most guaranteed bet of what will come up on exam day. If you look over the last, since this case study exam started, ethics is what gets examined the most. Okay, so that's a quick aside there. Governance comes up occasionally in the exam. Actually, I'm surprised that governance doesn't come up more often. I do think that if they're quoted, we know they're kind of UK based. This is the first case study that we've had that we've known it's in a particular real world country. Normally they choose things like Z-land and N-land, and so we say, okay, well, they're quoted there, but who knows what their governance rules are. But we do know now that they must follow the UK combined code, or certainly we can make that assumption. And so your revision back to P3 of what the UK combined code is, you know, things like CEO and chairman must be separated, regular discussions with the shareholders, that we must have non-executive directors, and so on and so on and so on, then that's going to be relevant. So do, as part of your revision, do a quick bit of revision on what that UK combined code is, because if you've got a governance question, that's going to be really helpful in terms of what they are doing well and what they're not doing well in relation to that. Okay. Now the next thing that we get from quoted company, what you'll see, remember I said earlier that what you'll find is that each of these, you know, there's so much that you can pull out of just very, very small elements here. So something else that we can pull up from a quoted company is that they are going to have shareholders. Okay, well, kind of obviously. Those shareholders are probably going to include institutional shareholders. We'll look and see later in the case if we get more detail on the shareholders. But usually we would treat most institutional shareholders, institutions of course being insurance companies, pension funds, people like that, as being in the keep satisfied box on Mendelow's matrix. So you may remember, I'm hoping you do, excuse me while I just type this in, there we go. I hope you remember Mendelow's matrix from your past studies. You would have studied it a number of times throughout your studies up to this point. The keep satisfied box is where they have quite a lot of power but not that much interest, and often the institutional shareholders, they tend to, as long as they're getting paid their dividends, as long as that they are getting an increase in the share price, then they're relatively happy. And so we want to keep them satisfied, communicate with them occasionally, telling them what the performance is, understanding their needs, making sure that we're meeting their needs in terms of the way that we're running the business. But by and large, let's make sure we're profitable, let's make sure we're giving them good dividends, and we'll look at that when we get to those sections in the case study to see whether we think that they are keeping them satisfied, paying relevant dividends, increasing the profits. And so that's going to be an important thing for us to look out for later on. The other thing in relation to quoted companies then is that that's going to therefore relate to raising finance. So we can start to think about some of the models that we might start to use this on, and we're going to try and build up the elements we're going to end up with in our strategic analysis. And so I've just put an S for strengthen the SWOT analysis. If we're quoted, it's going to support the raising of finance. We can raise debt finance, more equity finance should we need it in the future as well. We quite often see quoted companies in the exam, and I think the reason is that they do need to find F3 questions to ask you. Okay, they've got to find some E3, some F3 and some P3, not surprisingly. And actually it varies a lot. I remember a few case studies ago someone saying, but you know, you said that F3 would come up and there was no F3 questions in my exam at all. Yes, okay, you will get some exams that don't have F3 questions. And then I remember at the last sitting, someone saying, my whole exam was F3 based. It varies from case study to case study, and from variant to variant. You'll have one variant that's very E3 based, one that's more F3 based. You just have to be prepared to deal with all of them. To be fair, actually every exam will have a bit of E3, F3 and P3 in there, because if they've got to get that in there, they have to force that into every variant in some way. But there is a shift in certain directions. Okay, but look, this gives them the opportunity to test things like dividend policy and sort of raising debt and versus equity finance. You know, so we're going to raise some money. Should we raise it by debt? Should we raise it by equity? We're quoted. It gives us a lot more opportunities to answer F3 type questions. So you know, it's important therefore you're aware of some of the theory behind that. Don't spend too long revising the theory, remember. But you do need to know the background of it. Hopefully you've got enough from having recently passed your F3 OTs. Okay, so moving on then, we're still on the first line, and we have major theme park complexes. Fine, yeah, that's okay, yeah. But the key word around here is, or the key words are around the world. Okay, why is that an issue? Is because that's going to raise the issue of foreign exchange. So we're going to be dealing with different currencies. If we're going to be building a theme park in a new part of the world, then there's going to be a lot of spending in that overseas currency, a lot of money coming in that overseas currency once it's been opened, and therefore we're going to have potential foreign exchange issues. And we see later on in the case that there certainly are some foreign exchange issues. And so in terms of topics, and I said earlier actually foreign exchange could be an issue here, you know, in my top 10. We'll see how we get through the case and how much of an issue it becomes. Okay, but certainly foreign exchange is something that we do need to be aware of. Do we need to be aware of things like hedging techniques? In fact, let me just pop in just here that certainly if it does come to foreign exchange, being aware of your hedging technique from the P3 exam is going to be useful to you should something on foreign exchange come up. Okay. If we do decide to include that in our top 10, in that top 10 video, I'll do a revision for you of some hedging techniques. Okay, so we've got here we've got the founder, Burl Stanton, in 1962, set up the first theme park, grew this business. We've got a little general background information here. Very often with these theme parks, people will spend a day at the theme park. Certainly that was the traditional element, but a lot of theme parks nowadays are moving farther, and they are following suit as well. And this is generally true in the industry, from my industry research that I've been doing, is that far more so people are staying overnight, possibly for short breaks, perhaps visiting for a number of days, 2 or 3 days in a row, and potentially staying in hotels either nearby or actually operated by the provider themselves. And quite a lot of the big theme park operators have just been building more and more hotels near or even on their theme parks over the last few of the last 15-20 years, and this is a big trend in the industry, and not surprisingly this is what they are doing here too. Now I think it says here Burl Stanton's focus was on the theme park complex itself, and we certainly find as we go through the case study that the focus is very much theme parks. My expectation then is that what you're not going to get is lots of, your variant is not going to be about the hotel industry and how you go about managing hotels and things like that. I really think this is why actually the examiner has said that, well, he left the construction and operation of the hotels and other infrastructure to third parties. So basically what the examiner is saying here is that it's not going to be a hotel-based case study. We're not going to be asking all about hotels. It's going to be about theme parks. And we're just going to clarify that. Okay, so that's certainly worth bearing in mind. But we can't ignore that from a strategic point of view. So I could certainly see a question coming up about, should we be managing our own hotels or getting other people to manage those hotels for us? One thing certainly from this case, from the information so far, is it's uncertain here whether or not they actually own the hotels, but other people are constructing, operating and managing them for them, or whether they just say, no, they can be your hotels, maybe you're paying us a fee for being like a land rent for being on our theme park or near our theme park and things like that. We don't really know that, but I probably would assume that they actually own them. It's just that other people are constructing, operating and doing the infrastructure. We'll look later on in the case to see if we get new information on that. However, for the time being, let's just think, look, what would be the advantages of doing it yourself versus getting someone else to do all these elements for you? It's a little bit like outsourcing, really. And before we jump into those advantages and disadvantages, let's just look at a real-life example. Now, we're looking at UK, and the big UK theme park operator is Merlin, and Merlin own Alton Towers, which is probably the UK's biggest theme park. They also own Chessington World of Adventures. They own Thorpe Park. They basically they own Legoland. So anyone that lives in the UK, You've probably heard of those, certainly. I've not been to Thorpe Park, but I've been to Alton Towers a couple of times, Chessington, been to Legoland. I'm sure many of you would have been on school trips to those places if you live in the UK. If you don't, then Alton Towers and Chessington are just big theme parks, lots of roller coasters, those kind of things. Legoland, as perhaps in the name, is designed for younger children, okay, sort of your young children up to maybe children in their young teens, but probably not older. Thorpe Park is a kind of teenage-focused theme park. Actually, strategically, what was interesting is that when Merlin bought Thorpe Park was competing with Alton Towers and Chessington. It's located not too far away from Legoland and Chessington, actually. And so they thought, well, yeah, Legoland is for younger people. Chessington is like full family, everyone. There's things for a lot of adults there as well. So what we'll do is we'll make Thorpe Park more focused on teenagers. So what do teenagers want? That's going to be our big teen area to kind of fill the gap in the market so that there was a clear focus. That's quite interesting strategically, and certainly something we can think about later on when we look at the case is, well, they've got these different theme parks. Are they meeting the different needs of the different types of consumers that like to go to theme parks? And we can see how Merlin have been doing that. Okay, look, that's not the reason I'm telling you about Merlin. The reason I want to tell you about Merlin now is that they do operate their own hotels, and they've been largely in the last 15-20 years building hotels near their theme parks. So there is, you know, let's put here building hotels. Here's a trend. That's something, therefore, that we know that DreemPark do as well, and it's something to carry on. Now, you know, I talked earlier about how do you go about building in your industry examples into the case study. Let's say you had a question about hotels. Should we build a new hotel or not? Now, we know they've done this in the past, so we can say, look, this has been, firstly, it's been key to their strategy in the past, and therefore this would be a continuation of it. That would be a reason to build another hotel. Okay. If the question was, should we build it and operate it ourselves, then you can link it back to the case and you say, well, having the hotels, yes. Building them would be new expertise. We've not got the expertise or knowledge. We've not got knowledge of building or operation. That would be something we'd need to gain. That would be a challenge. And that might make me think I'd be less likely to actually do that. So can you see how we're bringing in stuff? I mean, in this case, it's just from that one line. Okay. This line, Burl Stanton there. It's just from that line. However, what you can also then do is start to bring in your industry knowledge. So you can then start to say, but actually the trend in the industry over the last 20 years or so has been to build hotels nearby. But firstly, you have the hotels and the revenue from that. Secondly, you have the fact that people then will be going to your theme park 2 or 3 days in a row, not just for a single day. So you've got custom at the theme park more as well. So you can bring that industry knowledge in, and it's always really useful in the exam if you gave a specific example. So what you might do is you might say, well, Chessington World of Adventures built a hotel in 2007. Actually, that was originally run and managed and owned by the Holiday Inn. So an external group. So they did what DreemPark do. However, Merlin decided that it was better in-house, and they basically purchased that from them in 2014. They took it over themselves. And so therefore, we could say, therefore, the industry trend tends to be that people are owning and managing them themselves. Merlin is a good example of where they tried the outsourcing route, but in the end decided doing it internally. Therefore, I recommend we do it internally to follow the industry norm. Something along those lines. Okay? So can you see how what you're doing is you're bringing in the industry example to support your answer. Now imagine you're a marker, and the marker can see, oh wow, this person, they know what's happening in the industry. They're bringing that to support their answer. They're using that in their analysis. The marker is very, very impressed with answers that are like that. Okay? And that's what I'd encourage you to do, is have those list of industry examples ready to use to support your answer in that way. But they do need to support your answer, not just be, oh, look, I've learnt this industry example, I'm going to pop that in, even though it's not relevant. It has to be relevant. You have to use that knowledge to build those. Okay, I've gone on the side for a moment there because, of course, what I was going to start off by doing was just saying to you, what are the advantages of doing it in-house versus what are going to be the advantages of outsourcing as they currently do. If they were moved to a more in-house basis, then of course they get full control over what they do, the way they operate it, the way that they sell it. They can make it, let's put in here consistency. Consistency of approach, style, branding. Okay, let's put here. So there's branding links. Of course, another advantage is the revenues and hopefully profits, assuming we can keep our costs down. So all of the revenues will come into the group and be part of their revenues as well. We're not sharing those profits with another provider. This would be the way of thinking about it. I suspect that DreemPark do get some revenues from the hotels. It's hard to know how, given the information so far, but probably wouldn't be as much as if you were running them, managing them efficiently yourself. And I want to put in here as well integration. You can integrate very much your hotel directly into the theme park. Things like transport between the hotel and the park can all be managed efficiently. The way that tickets are sold in combination with the hotel rooms, that can all be managed and controlled and managed and integrated as well. So there are definitely some advantages from in-house. Let's put here hotel management. If we've got our outsourced management, okay, or even ownership by an external party, then what you could say there is that you've got experts. When the Holiday Inn were running the hotel near Chessington, well, look, we know they are a world-leading expert in managing hotels. Okay, how can we hope to compete against them? Okay, that might be the argument that you might make. Surely they're the experts, know how to do that best. Okay, certainly that would be an advantage going down that route, and that's an advantage for DreemPark in terms of the way that they are doing it. Possibly the key advantage is that they can focus on their core competency. Do you remember this standard answer? Okay, what do you think their core competencies are here? Well, we've been given those in the case study here. Their core competencies are, Burl Stanton's focus was on the theme park complex itself. Okay. They can be experts in running and managing theme parks and leaving all the stuff about hotels and hotel management to the experts in that. The Holiday Inn, for example, at Chessington. Okay, so one thing I always like to see, whatever, is a clear strategy, which is obviously what they have here. Okay, and they're talking a little bit further on about building new theme parks, and then they always build the hotels around that. If they were building one in the Sahara Desert even, they'd have a number of hotels just around that. Okay, so nice and clear what they're doing. Also, from their point of view, they've got the experts to manage the hotels. They're focusing on their core competencies of theme parks. At least that's clear and focused, although because the industry trend is managing their own hotels, probably if that came up in the exam, and given that I could argue that very nicely with my 5 points there, I think I'd probably start saying, okay, maybe a time for a change in strategy might be a way to go. Okay, now here's another important element, is they've again strategically, they've got a bit of a focus here. And the strategic focus is on family entertainment, even to the extent that they have never sold alcohol or tobacco. And actually, I do wonder why the examiner is making a point over this. Could this be an issue in the exam? Potential someone's coming along and saying, oh, I think that there's a good opportunity here, isn't there? Okay, we could put opportunity in the SWOT analysis. We should start selling tobacco. We should start selling alcohol. Someone might argue, well, actually, you've got people that smoke will obviously visit your park, and they get there and suddenly they haven't brought any cigarettes with them, and they suddenly find that they haven't got any. Okay, and actually they're not enjoying their day as a result. Maybe the smokers that would expect to probably buy them somewhere on the theme park. okay, or have somewhere that they could smoke in certain parts of that. Maybe. So that could be an issue that comes up. But then you could say, well, actually, we've already been we'll see later, this is an extremely successful business. We've already been extremely successful by having this family focus. And this is all about our, clear family values and what we stand for. We don't want it to be seen as being okay to encourage people to drink or to smoke, potentially. And it's worked very well in the past. And yes, there is an opportunity. We might make some money out of it, but we also compromise what is true to our beliefs and our values. And so again, notice how we're weighing up the different issues against each other, the pluses and negatives. And remember I said at the start, remember your role in the case is to, up here, is to weigh up the options. Here are the options. Here are the advantages and disadvantages of one option. Could be another way of being it, the tobacco and alcohol or not. Then at the end, you make your recommendation. But I think on balance, given all of this, yes, we should start selling alcohol and tobacco. Or no, we shouldn't start selling it because the values are far too important. It will compromise our brand. Okay, so let's put values. Let's put branding in there as well, because branding is important to those kind of values and elements of that. Okay, they've got a UK-based head office. Okay, just so that we know that. Nothing else of importance, I don't think, there. Let's start to think about some models that we could potentially use. Something like, should we bring in alcohol and tobacco? Okay, we could use Ansough's matrix. Now, if you don't remember Ansough's matrix, that's where we have new and existing markets, that's customers, and new and existing products. Now, the market is the same. It's the same customers that are coming into our theme parks. Okay, so it's existing markets, but the product is new. It's not a product we've sold before, so that would be a new product. And so what you can do is you can say, in Ansough's matrix, this would be in the new product box. Then you talk about what that theory means. You don't discuss it theoretically. What you do is you say, well, what that means is it's a new product which we are uncertain. We've never sold that before. We don't understand things like licensing laws or tobacco laws. So there are risks associated with bringing that new product in. There are other risks, which is the branding issues and the value issues as well. But what you're doing, you see, notice how we're putting that into the context of what Ansough said about that box. Ansough said it was a medium risk box, and therefore we put our answer into the medium risk element. So we use Ansough, we'll get a mark for having used Ansough and used it appropriately, as well as making the same points about branding and values. And it also forces us to cover risk, because that's one of the points in there. And that's the way you should use models. So hopefully that little example shows you how models get used in this case study as well. What I should say, actually, if we're talking about models, is my hope is that things like outsourcing, in-house and outsourcing is something you've learnt about, and you can use your general list of advantages and disadvantages for outsourcing that hopefully you remember from your previous studies to answer the question on whether we should be in-house or outsourced, because actually you'll notice my points there are largely the kind of advantages and disadvantages for outsourcing, but what I've done is I've tailored it to this particular case, and you particularly tailor it when you bring in your industry examples as well on what's happening in the industry. So we've got the generic stuff plus the tailoring, plus linking it to their position, and then we've got what is a really high quality answer. Okay, just one more short section to go then before we bring this video to a close. Okay, so a lot of the rest of this report then are extracts from the integrated report for the year ended 31st of December 2015, and they have prepared these using international financial reporting standards. So that does mean that if anything does come up financial reporting wise, then using your IFRSs is the way to go. As I've said, it doesn't tend to be a popular topic, so certainly what I wouldn't recommend you doing is go back learning all your IFRSs just because it says that it's in accordance with that. Well, of course it is. It's an international company. They're going to produce consolidated financial statements. It is going to be there. So I wouldn't worry too much about learning detailed financial reporting or even spending a lot of time thinking about financial reporting issues. Okay. If anything comes up as we go through the case that I think might be sort of financial reporting wise, I'll point that in your direction. You can learn that, but don't go learning all that stuff. That would be a huge waste of your time. Okay, what is important though is this phrase here, is that the board are committed to strong corporate governance and leadership. Now, I've already talked about the combined code, and so that they must abide by that, but it's also, let's pop that in. Let's just put in here plus, it's a kind of value, it's a commitment. Now, the way that you can bring that up is that if there is something where they are not abiding by good governance practices, you can say, look, we are committed to corporate governance. We've stated that in our integrated report, and therefore this area where we're not meeting that, well, we shouldn't be doing that. It's also not consistent with the combined code, and therefore, that's another reason not to do it. So you're building up your, it's not consistent with it. It's not just a legal thing. It's actually what we value, what we're committed to, what is right to us. You're giving that as another justification as to why you would not do something that was not good governance. Okay. They're also committed to transparency in disclosures. So that a very important financial reporting principle is that we are open about things. Again, that could bring us up to, is the examiner saying there, I've not seen that phrase in past case studies, this area of transparency, is that a possible ethical issue? Maybe. If I was writing an issue on that, this is what I would do. I would say, oh, such and such a director, or maybe we've had a problem. Maybe it's a health and safety breach or something like that, or it's financial reporting. Profits are lower than we're expecting. And someone comes along and they say, let's not disclose that. Let's just hide that away. Best that people just don't know about that. Okay. And, well, we would turn around and say, well, actually, no, our values are transparency and openness. These things happen. We do make mistakes. We will be open. We will admit it, and we will say what we're doing about it and how we won't make that mistake before, and we will move on. That is our value. That's what's important to us, and that's how you would answer it, because that's what is important to them. So I could definitely see that. I do wonder why that's in there, and so I do think an ethical issue. Ethical issues, as I've already said, very, very common in this exam, and there's an immediate one I think could be relevant here. Finally, from an ethical point of view, I think this last statement, they want to create sustainable value for the communities which it serves. So obviously that includes people like shareholders and other stakeholders. But this is just a general ethics and even more corporate social responsibility, CSR. And again, that's opening it up for the examiner to ask questions about things like, maybe it could be things like noise for the local community, traffic problems for the local community, those kind of things about the areas in which people are operating. And they need to think about those people, not just the shareholders and profits. They're going to be broad in the way that they think. Okay, so this is throwing it up. CSR, ethics are important. That means we're going to see ethics and CSR issues in this exam. And so there you have it. There's this first video in the analysis of this case study. Of course, we're just starting on the journey. There's a lot more hours of analysis coming up soon, but I hope you've enjoyed this first video, and in the second we'll start to look at the theme parks themselves and the way they operate them. And if you're watching this on YouTube or on our website as part of the free video that we offer, this first one we always give away free to everyone. So basically you can sample what you'll get. This is the first video in what will be 5-6 hours worth of videos, hopefully giving you what you need to help you analyze the case to get the most out of the exam. What we'll focus on, if we look at this E3 focus, we'll carry on going through, doing more on business models, more likely exam issues. We'll bring up some industry guidance as and when is necessary. I hope you've seen that we've done that on that first one there. I've hoped to give you those exam hints and tips on this first video as well, in terms of ways to approach in the exam, and we'll do those as and when, as I say. I think that there's relevant things that come up. We'll have a video on F3, a video on P3, looking at the risks in the case. On the F3 one, we'll analyse the numbers, do ratio analysis. We'll talk you through what those numbers mean, talk you through about finance and those elements of it. We'll do a full strategic analysis with all the big business strategy models. I'll work through each of those for you so you understand how to use those in the exam, give you my strategic plan. I will talk you through my top 10 issues and how to use those in the exam, and there'll be an industry analysis video analysing, giving you a real focus on the industry. And of course, it's not just about, this is the video series. If you join our course, this is all included, but of course on the course you will get mock exams based on the DreemPark case study with full solutions. We'll mark those mocks for you, and we'll give you that. You know, marking mocks, this is going back to tips. For me, industry analysis is really, really important. Okay, this is really, really important, as you've seen from what we've done so far. But you know, even more important than that is doing mocks and getting feedback on those mocks. Most people, when they send us their first mock in, they fail the first mock exam. Almost always. I'm talking 90%. Even the most brilliant of students, the prize-winning students, fail the first one. And yet what you often get is people who get into the exam and it's the first one that they've taken. They've almost got no chance. And the reason is however much you know what you're supposed to write in the case study or how you write good sentences and so on, doing it is completely different. Okay, and so the biggest thing is to do mock exams and get the feedback on those. Of course, we've got 3 of those included, the feedback of 3 of those included. On the course. We do 5 in total in terms of mocks, 3 of which are marked. But it's that feedback that makes the biggest difference of everything that we do. Okay, but we've got online forums where you can ask questions and get in touch with me to ask me questions personally. You can do that via email as well if you're on our course or on our forums. So anything that you want answered. We've got 2 masterclasses, full live day events that are included on that as well. A pack on ethics to help you focus on ethics, and a whole load of other stuff. Look on the website for details of our courses, but a whole load of stuff for you, the full complete package, and with pass guarantee as well. So if you do everything on the course and you fail, you get the course again and again and again, as long as you keep on completing the course. So a full guarantee that we know that when people do complete their course, they typically pass, and that's why we're able to give that away. Okay, and you can also try it. We've got a trial period, and you can get all your money back if after a short period of time you didn't think that it's going to really help you pass, which is it's just very rare that we have people take us up on that, but it is there. That is an offer too. Anyway, so hopefully you'll buy one of our videos, or you'll buy the video series, or indeed you'll join us on our course. And whatever you decide to do, even if you don't decide to do anything, actually just a second again, if you are doing this yourself, okay, which I know that everyone's in different positions, you should be trying to do all these things yourself as part of your analysis. Go through all the business models from E3, think about what the likely exam issues are, do an analysis from an F3 and P3 point of view. So you've done your full strategic analysis yourself, work out what you think the most likely issues are, and then analyse those issues to decide, put yourself in a good position ready for the exam. Do your own industry analysis and come up with your own industry examples. So if you are going to go your own route, please you don't need that one, please do that yourself, and work that through of your own time so that you are ready come exam day. And whatever you do, whichever way you decide to study, I really do wish you the best of luck throughout your studies, and particularly on exam day itself, and wish you the best of luck in your goal. Now you're one step away from being a qualified accountant, and the quite a significant pay rise that for most people that will bring. Okay, I mean, I was looking at some stats the other day on my Facebook page. I posted some stats on salaries, and it's, for most people in the UK, it's a sort of £5,000 immediate increase in salary, and so it really is significant, and it goes on well beyond that as well, and you kind of reach that barrier where you can't go any further until you've actually qualified. So this is the final hurdle. So whatever you do, work really hard, put the time in, make the effort. It'll be worth it in the end to be a qualified accountant, and I wish you the best of luck as you go through doing that.